Nicholas Taylor, man, yeah. Nicholas Taylor for his friends is a dev on the ASP NET team, and he developed SignalR. If you like SignalR, that's him, part of it. Now he's working on the Razor stuff in ASP NET MVC and also on MVC in general. And what do you? Oh, yeah. I want to say something. SignalR, MVC. There was something. No, there was something. Oh, he won the Imagine Cup 10 years ago, something like that. 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And it's very funny because everywhere in the campus, there are some big pictures of Imagine Cup every year. And he's the main guy on the picture because he won that. It's like, yeah, I won Imagine Cup. He's a great star. Yeah, very well known in Microsoft. Thank you, Taylor, for being here, and have a great talk. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me all right? All good? All right, so I promised one slide yesterday, and this is the one epic slide. Thanks, Sebastian, for the wonderful template here. So today I'm going to be talking to you all about developing with ASP.NET vNext. Who here did not get the opportunity to attend Alon's and Scott Hunter's talk yesterday? OK, well, most of you did. That's fantastic. I'm going to kind of be moving from a little bit where they left off. I'm going to roll back a little bit to kind of remind you. And we're going to kind of figure out how you guys can kind of get your hands dirty, start playing with this stuff, and see what we do with it. All right, so I'm going to be using Dev14 CTP1. Let me change my display mode here. These work. All right. And if you guys want to get your hands on this, you can just go to asp.net/vnext. Oh, I don't have internet connection. This is fun. Open. See if we can get connected real quickly. If not, that's fine. Ooh, yay. Am I good? And then you can just click this big green install button, kind of follow the steps, and you can basically use what I'll be showing today. And it's really simple.
It doesn't work side by side with the others, does it?
It's not recommended. For now, on this machine, I just have Dev14 CTP1 just to kind of have a clean slate to show exactly what you guys would be using.
By default, there's a blocker that will prevent you from installing. Yeah. If you have other versions of Visual Studio, there's a reg key you can set to disable it. That's what I did in my computer. Don't do that. There are Azure VMs where you can just log in. I think if you have an MSDN subscription or something like that, you can just TS for free using your MSDN subscription to get access to a VM that has the CTP installed. As Scott mentioned yesterday, we're working to make sure that future CTPs are side-by-side safe. So this is kind of just a temporary thing because there wasn't time to make it all safe.
So yeah, go ahead and install that, and you can play around with exactly what I'm going to be using today. That's kind of the goal of all this thing. So I'm going to roll back a little bit to what Alon and Hunter did at first. And I'm going to do File, New Project. And we're just going to look at the basic web application to see, again, what we offer you out of the box for you to play with, to see what works. And then I'm going to kind of step back and take away all the noise, and we're going to start something from scratch. So again, we have our content controllers, models, scripts, and views. A lot of the stuff you guys are already familiar with. And then we have some new stuff. Config.json, project.json, startup.cs. This is like new stuff. Config is like our app config replacement. Let me just minimize this real quickly. Yeah, config.json is like our app config replacement. Project.json is, think of packages.config plus csproj. It's kind of the imagination of both those combined. And then startup.cs is where you say what you want to use in your application. You kind of define it all. So here, if we look, say, we're using browser link by default. We're having some configuration. We're using dependency injection. This is our services. We're doing Entity Framework and so forth. So again, this is just glazing over it real quickly. So let's start a brand new application. So I'm going to do File, New Project. And this time I'm going to do New Empty Web Application. So we give you basically nothing off the bat. And that's the idea. So all we have is project.json, startup.cs. Startup.cs is obviously very raw, nothing there. And project.json is basically empty. All we have is Helios. That's our kind of lightweight, optimized ASP.NET bootstrapper. So super raw. So let's start off with doing our basic hello world application in ASP.NET vNext. So what that looks like is, Alon showed this yesterday, is app.run async context, execute this method, response.write async. So whenever a request comes in, this method will then run, no matter what the request is. And we're saying, write to the HTTP context response, write the content hello world. So if I run this guy, you should see simply hello world. Boom. And this is any request. So it doesn't matter what's in the query string. It's any request. There is no conditions. Now, if I wanted to, I could get fancy. I could obviously add if context.request.path and so forth. I could make conditions, and I can kind of return what I want. But there's a better way to do this. There's a better way to kind of separate your application in your startup.cs file. And that's called app.map. So let's look at app.map. I'll say other path. And then I'll say app with 3 Ps, because this is essentially just this entire configure method just scoped down a little bit. So whenever we match this other path endpoint, we're now going to fall into this execution pipeline. So we can then do app.run async context, await context.response, the exact same thing we had before. Hello from other path. So it's the exact same thing. All you're doing is scoping it down to another level, depending on what comes in. And we kind of give you this control out of the box. So if I go back here and I hit refresh, again, this is one of these awesome features in Visual Studio. I can just refresh right off the bat. And I hit my other path endpoint. I get hello from other path. And let me just increase this a little bit. Hello from other path. So we now can have more control over it. And this is any other path following that endpoint. It doesn't matter. But this doesn't include things like other path, then something. That just falls back to whatever we have. So I'm going to ask a question here. Does anyone have any idea what would happen if I were to move this after? Would it make a difference? Any ideas? So that is one of the really big misconceptions. You wouldn't think it would make a difference, but it actually does. And so let's look at actually what happens. So I'm going to hit the other path. And once this guy completes, we can see it's still hello world, and there's a reason for that. So when a request comes in, it looks at the first, what we're calling middleware. That's what we're basically doing here. We're setting up middleware. It's an ON concept to handle your request. And this happens to be able to handle our request. It says, I know that I can handle whatever request is coming in. It fits my criteria. So this runs and it handles it, and it short circuits. It says, all right, I'm done. Don't need to do anything else. So because of that, technically this fits the other path criteria because it handles everything. So there's no reason to ever go forward anymore. So a big thing is order matters. So when you're doing your applications, you can control what happens, but order absolutely matters. OK, so this is kind of the beginning process of thinking of how you can kind of separate concerns for your application in this ASP.NET vNext world. You can think of adding your own frameworks, adding our frameworks, and kind of separating them based on paths, or really doing whatever you want. We give you the full control of that. So the next step here is, I'm going to reopen Visual Studio, and I'm going to open up the other web application so I can kind of reference it. Oh, was that 25? You know, I've done a lot of demos on this one. I have 25 web applications. All right, so I'm just going to go over here, projects. And I think it's 26 here. I assume it's increment. All right, so this was what we had before. So we covered a little bit of our startup.cs. I'll come back to it. I'll go more over it a little bit. The next thing I want to go over is config.json, kind of going over how you can configure your app and ways you can do that in the new world. So let's add a config.json. Let's do exactly what they were doing in the kind of default app that we give you. The new item, text file, config.json. All right, let's make some values. We're going to say JData as an object, jfoo from JSON file. Config. Let's make it more appropriate. All right, so super simple configuration. Nothing really special going on here. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do var config. Let's go to new configuration. I'm going to include, did I miss it? There you go. All right. And I want to do .add JSON file, but I don't have it yet. So this doesn't exist quite yet because we need to add a reference. So whenever you're looking to add something new to your project, hop over to your project.json and add a reference to it. So I happen to know that my JSON configuration is right here. So if I want to add JSON configuration, that's how I do it. And for those who really do enjoy the app.config or using XML, you can still do that. It's not a problem. It follows the same standards. So I'll just use this guy. All right, so this is config.json. Now, how do I reference this? How do I get that value out of my configuration store? Let's make another path so I can kind of just keep building up my epic Hello World program here. Ideally, by the end, we should have this conglomerate of a Hello World application. All right, so we'll say JSON. We'll say whenever we hit the JSON endpoint, run this code, and we're going to retrieve that JSON value. So do config.get. Now I said JData, jfoo. So this is basically saying, look for the parent element JData, look for jfoo, and if jfoo had children to it, I could keep going. It's all up to you. So pull the jfoo value. So I'm going to go over here and refresh this. And remember, I fixed my application, so I should get my other path here. That's expected. So from other path. Now, JSON, I get my JSON config. I have anything else, I get my default. So I still have everything configured. It's all running kind of side by side with itself, all separated. OK. Another thing that Alon and Hunter mentioned is that we now support INI files, any files. So not any files, but INI. When I first heard it, I'm like, wait, any file? Wait, what?
We do support any files. Write a config provider.
There you go. All right. So simple extension, just add INI. And as you notice, I didn't have to go to my project.json for this. This was just already there for you. So kind of one of the defaults. So I'm going to do config.ini, and I need to make this file. So I'm just going to copy and paste this and rename config.ini. All right. So how an INI file looks. I'm going to say idata, ifoo is equal to from INI file. So this is like a section. This is a child in that section, and this is the value of that child. So this is where something kind of cool happens. So here we knew how to reference our child objects in a JSON configuration. In this new world, we try to make things as unified as possible, kind of like our dependency injection and all these other things that we're really doing to make things that you only have to learn once. So I can literally just make another INI path, and instead of just JData, I can access it the same way. All I do is just change how I do it. Because again, I'm technically just adding both of these configuration values to the same configuration object. There's nothing really different going on there. It's the same object, so we reference it the same way. So go over here. Should all in paths still. Again, nothing's changed. Hit INI from INI file. So we're now pulling from our INI configuration, from our JSON configuration. We have a default path. We have a custom path. A lot of stuff going on here. The final kind of cherry on top here for configuration is we added this new ability to do config.add environment variables. And Hunter mentioned this briefly. And at first it's like, oh, adding environment variables, that's not all that important. But it's actually pretty huge. Who here actually enjoys doing publishing your website or publishing your app to Azure and hoping to God it doesn't fail? Well, this is one of those ways how you can kind of avoid doing that. If you configure your app properly and you pull from enough configuration values, you could potentially go to your Azure dashboard, change a few values in your environment config, restart your app, and you're done. you don't republish anymore. You don't necessarily have to if you do your app right. And of course, if I really wanted to, I could make certain overrides. So for instance, if I wanted INI to have a really high priority, like if I have INI file, it means that there's something really important about the configuration value. I could always just add it after, config.addINI. And now I'm prioritizing INI files over environment variables. It's, again, order matters. All right, so that's a lot of our config. And that covers this config.json. And again, you can use XML if you're interested. But from web config, it's pretty flexible. All right, so that covers a lot of the new concepts from a project standpoint, other than what Alon and Hunter covered yesterday. So let's get into some new features. Let's get into new things from MVC. So in order to use MVC, we obviously have to configure it. And that involves adding stuff to our startup.cs. So first, I need MVC. So I'm going to go microsoft.aspnet.mvc. And I'm going to add this. And before I save it, this is really important in this new world, make sure you have this set the package manager log. Because a lot of the time, if your app has big red squigglies everywhere, or if it's not running, not compiling something, it's usually because you're in the middle of package restore. So the second I save this file, and, oh, it didn't actually fill this out for me. Second I save this file, we're going to see package restore kind of take off. And kind of the source of truth here is once we see MVC in this list, that means it's done. And of course, package restore complete is a pretty good indicator too. So MVC magically appeared there. We have it. Fantastic. So we can't just start writing controllers. We actually have to configure it. We have to go to our startup.cs, and we have to add this thing. So thankfully, it's pretty easy. So I'm going to add MVC. Oh, let's give an error here. Semicolon. All right. So I'm going to decide to add MVC after all of these paths, but before my default one. So the idea is if a request comes into my server, it's any of these paths, handle it like you would. Then try and handle it with MVC if none of those can handle it. And if MVC can't handle it, well, let's just do our default path, and I'll actually call this default. Right? So here's how we start using MVC. Use services, setting up my dependency injection containers here. And services.addMVC, it's the first part. And if we look over here at our old app, or our kind of default app, you have a ton of stuff in this use services because everything kind of has their own dependency injection needs. MVC, this is all you need. Just this line here. So that's all we're going to add. Let me just add a few enters here just to separate. This is MVC. Now we need one more line of code. App.useMVC. Anyone have any idea what this useMVC method does? Any idea? There, routes, yes, exactly. So kind of how we're configuring all of our routing here, saying, oh, a request comes in, it meets my criteria, handle it. MVC has to do the same thing. So this is where MVC is saying, all right, let me jump into this pipeline, let me try and handle a request. So that's what this guy's doing. All right, let's create a controller. Now, this should look pretty similar. Just get a new controller class, home controller. And for now, I'll just do content, and I'll say, hello from controller. So my app is now getting kind of complex. So if I hit this home path of /index, that matches my home index path. I could also do /home, same thing. If I did home, I get my default. I have everything else, though, still. Kind of still there. Nope, but thank you, autocomplete. So forth. Still have everything. We now have MVC running alongside all these other potential applications that we're using, all because you can really configure it as you go. Really cool stuff. Oh, no, I closed Internet Explorer. Bad habits. OK, so who here has ever used every single member on a controller class? Anyone? I would bargain to say almost no one ever has, because we give you a ton of stuff, and you'd really have to try to use everything. And this is only a subset of what there was in MVC 5. It's still going to increase. So this is a big complaint we got, that I extend this controller class, and I kind of have to have everything. I don't want everything, though. So we have allowed POCO controllers, kind of choose what you want. So I can actually delete this base class. I'm now no longer having this content method. That's fine, though. I happen to know that that's a new content result. And I can do content is equal to this. Okay. Fix this real quick. All good still? All right, awesome. So new content result. And I now can run stuff from my controller just like I normally would, all because it ends in this convention. It ends in controller. So I closed IE, forgot. OK, so let's run this. So now I expect to see hello from Poco controller. Awesome. So it's now convention-based. You don't have to have everything. And do you guys remember what Alon showed of how you can kind of pull in your own dependency-injected stuff via the constructor? aka home controller, my class of something, foo, and you can kind of pull it in. Well, you can also pull in our stuff. It's not just your own dependency-injected material. So I happen to know that, I don't know, a URL helper, let's use this guy, that I can pull this guy in. This is property injection. And I'll just save it. So when this controller is constructed, MVC is going to be like, oh, you need this URL helper. Cool. Here, I happen to have it in my dependency injection container. Give it a shot. So we now have this. And I'll add something. I guess I'll do is local URL, and I'll do Bing. OK. And Bing obviously is not local. We should expect this to be false. I'll go over here, and I'll refresh. And we expect a nice semicolon and a false. So we now have dependency injecting MVC stuff, not just your own, MVC objects that you can now use. So we take this one step further, because you don't always only want what you want from the dependency injection container. Sometimes you might need a little bit more, like HTTP context. That's probably pretty important in concept of a controller. So right now we have some property injection. We're going to be expanding this, but right now there's some specific things. One of those happen to be action context. And action context allows us to get to the HTTP context. So I'll go over here, and I'll do action context dot hgcontext dot request. What is there? Oh, Blue Protocol is easy. So we expect there to be a nice old HTTP here instead of false, because we're now property injecting our what's that? It does. That worked.
Oh, sorry.
Because that was,
Oh.
yeah. So now we are property injecting action context. And we're going to expand this. We're going to property inject more things. So you truly can choose what you want, only what you want, because not everyone ever uses anything. And if you happen to be just the hacking type and you're really trying to get something done quickly, that's fine. Extend the controller. There's no problem with that. Yes?
Could you have pulled in the IURL helper through property injection too?
So right now you can't, but like I said, we're expanding it to allow for more things, that being one of them. OK. So we have MVC, Poco controllers. OK, so that is Poco controllers in a nutshell. So has anyone here ever used child actions? Anyone? Who here has no idea what child actions are? It's OK. All right. Child actions are essentially just a way to kind of do like a render partial, but via an actions like body. It's like doing a controller. It's calling an action on a controller, but doing it within another action, aka child action. They can't be called on their own. So that is the concept of them. Now there was a big issue with this in the old world. It was kind of clunky. Who wanted to add like another action decorated with a child action only attribute? It wasn't very nice to use in the old world. So we made a replacement for this. Child actions are no longer. They don't exist. And instead, we made something called view components. So I'm going to do add new item, class, and I'll do hello view component to kind of stay with the hello theme. All right, and a view component happens to be a lot like a controller. So I'm extending view component here, kind of like I would at a controller. And if I look at this view component class, I have context, result, view bag, view context, a lot of the same stuff you have as a controller. And that's the idea. We want this to feel very similar, but it's a little bit different. Now I want to invoke this view component. I need to add a magic method. And this happens to be a view component result, and then invoke. I had to think about that. All right, so I'll do return result.content. This is a member. This result guy is a member on this class. .content, hello from view component. Cool, so I'm just returning a string. How the heck do I actually use this? I need to have a view. So let's add a view folder. Add new folder, views. I'll do home because I've been using this home controller. And then I'll add a view. New item, razor, cool. Hello from home view. OK, so before I do view component, let's just make sure this works. And I actually need to change this guy. I'm going to get rid of all this stuff because I'm going to go back to the easy world because I'm in demo world here. Extend controller. And I'll just return view. Looks very familiar to what you're used to. Old world. That's the idea. And I hit run, and I should expect it to say hi from my view. It's the first step. We're making sure this runs. All right, cool. We have our view running. Now, let's execute this hello view component. I want to see hello from view component here. So I'll do h1 to kind of put some emphasis. I'll do component. This is new. At component dot invoke, and I'll say hello. Now, the reason why it's hello is this is hello view component. I could be very specific here, though, if I wanted to. I could do view component name is equal to hello. It's really up to you. And actually, I'm going to change one thing, int value. Let's add this. All right, so we're invoking our hello view component, passing in leet, 1337, and hopefully we can see it. Please work. Thank you. All right. So hello from view component. You now have a modular way to kind of execute something sub-action-like in your view. It's really nice. Now, another complaint we got was, cool, you can execute something alongside your view, but I want to go out to my database. I want to do asynchronous work. Razor views happen to be synchronous, so who wants to tie up a server thread and kind of murder your performance by kind of waiting on an asynchronous method? Like, it just doesn't work well in the old world. So in this new world, Razor is now rendered asynchronously, which means we had to kind of add that support for view components. So there's this invoke async. Hello. And I'll just do 1338. And I'm actually missing something here. This is a new Razor keyword, await. So since it's now rendered asynchronously, we had to kind of add this whole await concept. So just await space, whatever you want. It could be anything. Doesn't have to be component. It could be anything asynchronous. So next part, I need to add this invoke async method to my view component, because it doesn't exist yet. So I'll go over here, and let's fake some multi-threading here, or asynchronous behavior, rather. I'll do that. And then I'll do task.fromResult iView component result this. OK. Oh, look at that. Thank you. And name this invoke async. So I now have an asynchronous way to now execute my view component. And you can imagine, do async stuff. Do whatever you want, asynchronous. This way, you're now using the built-in asynchronous behavior of net 4.5, basically. But you're no longer tying up threads. You're no longer having to worry about performance, because we kind of take care of that for you. It's nice. So I'll go over here to make sure this works. Oh, did I actually do it? I did. I forgot. All right. So 1338. And just to make this really clear to show I'm not using the same method, let's do hello from async view component. Sorry for the jumping around. You should see from async view component. So asynchronous, beautiful, it's wonderful. All right, so those are some of the little features we have going here. There's a lot more, and due to lack of time, I'm going to kind of segue into something else here. And who here is command line developers? Who really enjoys using the command line? Wow, not anyone? Oh, okay, a few people. That is awesome. So Alon and Hunter kind of mentioned this yesterday, where all Visual Studio is doing is kind of shelling out to some command at the command prompt level in order to build these projects. So this means that we can also do that. So what does it take to run my application from the command line? Kind of the next step here. So first off, this is an amazing console, by the way. ConEMU, if anyone's interested. First off, let's go to our default kind of application that we give you out of the box, because this is already configured to run command line. Grab the path, go there, and I'm going to say kweb. K is in my path. It's a runner. And web is a command, basically. So I get it started. I happen to know that this is running on localhost 5000. I'll show you why I know that. But I can now visit that. There it is. Oh, that is large. Me back up a little bit. And this is my default application. I have everything I have there, but I'm now running it not on IIS, but self-hosting it. It's all command line. So that's really, really cool. All right, so let's try this with our own application, what we just used. Spoiler, I expect this to fail horribly. All right. Nope. Okay. All right, so I'll go over to our application. I'm going to do kweb, and I expect it to explode. Thank you. All right, so it's basically saying I don't recognize this command. I have no idea what that is. So I'm like, all right, shoot, what did I miss? Go over to my project.json, and I happen to see this command section with the nice little web keyword. This is obviously arbitrary. It could be anything you want. Like, oh, I should probably add that to my project. So let's add that to our project. Go over here, and I'm going to add my web command. Now, we're not done yet. What this command is doing is basically saying, I need an application which has a public static void main to then host a server that hosts my application. So that static void main, this guy, our server, aka our self-hosted mechanism, and then where we want to self-host it, and 5000 is what it was. So we're missing one piece here, and that is just this Microsoft.aspnet.server.weblistener. So I'm going to add that. ASP.net.server.weblistener. OK. So I need that, and I'm going to go to my handy-dandy package manager console to make sure everything is built. It is awesome. And I'm going to try kweb again. Let's see if we can run this. So there's two steps. Remember, it's adding the command and then adding the dependency. We can now run this thing command line. So if I go there, I now have my exact app running self-hosted, not on IIS. Simple as that, really. Super easy and convenient. All right. So Hunter also mentioned that we want you guys to be able to develop in the runtime that you'll be pushing to. So what does that mean? In the old world, basically it'd be like one runtime per machine, pretty much. You could be on one runtime and then push to a different machine which had a different runtime, which is not the most ideal situation because things could blow up. And before you know it, you're pushing dead code to an environment and you're harming all your customers, which obviously is nothing. It's not good. So this new world, we try and isolate this a little bit more. So I have this command called kvm. This is our k runtime environment version manager. And I happen to have multiple runtimes installed on my machine. I have more than one. So I'm currently using the active 0446. And I have 0481 and 0506 right now. I also happen to know that these guys do not work with my current version of my application because they're too new. So let's go over to our app real quick and let's upgrade all of our dependencies. So give me the latest. Give me the latest, give me the latest, and give me the latest. And then hit the magical save button and see Package Manager go nuts. So once this is completed, I'm going to have the latest of all of these dependencies, which ideally should work with my newer runtimes that I have on my machine. So let's actually, in order to run this in VS, I'd have to restart it. But currently using 0446, I'm going to do kvm use 0.1-alpha-build-0481. Let's try this guy out first. I'll do kweb. See if this works. All right. So I'll go to 5,000. And it works. Now, how do we know it's working? How do we know it's actually using this environment? Let me add a little bit of magic code here. Don't really worry about what this is doing. This is just simply a nice way to see what runtime you're running on. So I'm going to go to startup, and I'm going to change my default path to now return what runtime I'm running on. Instead of this, I'll replace this, and I'm just going to add this magic code. OK. So let's go back here. Let's do kweb. Start it back up. And I should now be able to see exactly what I'm running on if I hit the default path. So I'm running on 0481, and that's what I use. That's what I expect. Cool. So now you could be thinking, oh, you're just switching runtimes and you're using it. I get it. So I happen to have another console here. So let's go to another console, and I'm going to get my path again. Go over here. And then I'll do kvm list, kvm use 0.1 alpha-build-0506. I'm using a different runtime now. And mind you, this is still running. Oops. Still running. Nothing's changed. I've simply switched runtimes in this area, and I'm going to say kweb. Oh, I actually had to change a port real quickly. Because I can't run the same thing on the same port. That would just kind of not be right. I'll just hit 5001. All right, kweb. So this is going to boot up another self-hosted server. It's going to tie into the 5001 port, and it's going to be using a different runtime. So I'll go over here, localhost 5001, and I'm now using 0506. If I hit refresh, I'll just do JSON. This guy's still running. This guy's still running. The only difference is they're different runtimes, entirely different runtimes. So we now have side-by-side running of these runtimes. You're no longer tied down to a single thing. All right, so how much time do I have? 42. All right, so I haven't done this. I'm going to try it. I have a bit of time, so I'm going to try this out. OK, so I'm going to do kvm alias default. Don't worry about it. This is basically just to make sure Visual Studio uses my my runtime. So do k2.1 alpha-build is 0506. I'm going to restart Visual Studio. All right. And let's see if I can have Visual Studio now use this. Oh, forgot one thing. Visual Studio is iffy. The second it starts using a new runtime, you actually have to kill the bin and the packages folder. And that means I also have to kill Visual Studio to kind of release it. So go over here, kill these guys. Really? That's fine. Oh, no, it didn't do anything. Fun. Let's get back on. See. This might not work. Let's see. If this does work, I'd be very happy. If it doesn't, sorry, it's alpha. Restore failed. Let's see. Cannot access file. Oh, do I have it open? That could be it. Open in another process. All right, so let's do this. There it is. Okay, so we didn't close out the app real quick, and that is the reason why, which is fine. So kill this guy. Let's now try and clear this, which I should be able to clear it. Hey. All right. Over here. Reopen. All right. This should now work correctly. All good. Still sorry. Once this references have finished loading. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you that when we publish an app, that we kind of package the runtime in with it. So not only is it multiple runtimes per machine, it's when you actually publish your app, you publish the runtime with it. So you no longer have to worry about what runtime your machine is currently on. It's just kind of there. So you deploy and you use exactly what you're used to developing on. Let's make sure this guy runs. Awesome. See what runtime we're using? 0506. Cool. All right, I have some time. So actually, let's see. Do I have a USB on me? Do. All right. Does anyone happen to have a Windows 8.1 computer that you wouldn't mind me borrowing that I could display? All right, bring it over.
Mouse?
It doesn't matter. Okay. So I haven't done this. This is probably going to fail, so this is probably going to fail. All right, let's publish this guy. So I'm publishing it to my USB drive. Because, like I said, we package the runtime with it, and now since we've made everything super modular, it is as simple as packaging it up and just using it even on a USB. All right, so once this is done, and this is Windows 8.1, correct? All right, awesome. Once this is done, we should have three things: packages, wwroot, and web.cmd. Yay. All right. Please work, please work. All right, eject. I hit eject there, didn't I? There we go. Okay. So these are USB ports, I assume. I'm going to switch the display over to yours real quick. Micro USB. Do you have an HDMI? Am I right? So let's see. This guy should. I may have to change the output, I believe, here, but this should work. Unless that. Did it? Nope. Is this source 3? It does not. It should automatically do that. Source 2, okay. HDMI. Okay. All right, now this is the point where you can all laugh at me if this doesn't work. Oh, what? Where's the mouse? Oh, this. Wow, that's a mouse. Okay. So this is probably going to fail. Web.cmd. And again, I'm on port 5001. So this is obviously not our machine. This is just a machine. Happened to be running Windows 8.1. Started. This is good news. All right. So open, okay. Local host 5001. Let's see. And just like that, we have it running. Now, we package the runtime so you can even see here. Since we packaged it, we're using it. From a USB. Random laptop. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I haven't messed around with the Mac stuff yet. David probably would be able to do that for you. All right, so I'm actually gonna switch this if he does. Yeah, I'm all done. All right, so, oh yeah, hoping you can see him pull that guy out. That's fine. All right, so one last piece I want to show everyone, because I mentioned many times in this presentation that this is alpha. It's really new. When I say really new, I mean you're going to get builds every single day. So new, in fact, that my mic will drop. So new, in fact, that it's on GitHub, and you can follow us along the way, seeing as all of us commit and do our wonderful work. So we have MVC here 17 hours ago. Really new. So what happens when you run into a bug? You don't know how to fix it. You're in a new world. This is all kind of new. Or what happens if you are just curious about how something works? Well, normally what you would do is you go to either Reflector, say, oh, let me find that piece of code and figure out what it does via decompiled code. Not the easiest thing to do, but doable. Or you'd say, oh, yay, my project happens to be open source. Let me go scour the internets to find that exact file to find out what it does. Good, not great. So one really nice thing in this new Dev 14 environment, new build system, is that if you happen to have the source, and I do, I cloned this yesterday, you can copy that path, go over here, add a little magic file called global.json. Global.json, and add sources, and I'll replace this. Okay. All right, cool. And then over here, I just need to save. Now, if I go to the package manager log, see what it's doing. Oh, basically, oh, is it not going? Should be. Oh, there we go. All right. So I want you to look at the right-hand side, the Solution Explorer. And, why is it not working? Curious now. So normally what would happen is this would actually bring in all of, oh, actually I know why. I'm being silly here. Forgot. That's not where the codes are. This is where the solution file is. This is where the codes are. All of our projects. All right, let's try this again. Hit save. Package restore in progress. It goes nuts. You watch the Solution Explorer. Let's hope this works. Wonderful. So now I basically told Visual Studio, told the build system, not necessarily Visual Studio, that I have some more sources in this specified location. And I pointed at my MVC folder. Pretty cool. Like, OK, and it goes out and it grabs them. Now that's nice. I now have it in Visual Studio. But wouldn't it be nice if I could F12 into things? I want to use my own code to figure out how things work or to figure out why something may be broken. So you guys all kind of took my word on the fact that this use MVC method added routes. Let's look for sure. At F12, I can now go directly into the source just by cloning it. Because we're now all open source, constantly evolving. So we now see this. Now, better yet, put a breakpoint here. If I run, oh, so I ran into this once before. Visual Studio sometimes gets into wonky states where you may actually have to restart it because the tooling just kind of fails to restart everything for you when you do that. So if you get that, You may have to restart Visual Studio. It's fine, not a big deal. All right, let's let these guys load up. Again, this is important because you can see it takes a little bit. So if you're ever wondering why something's not working or not running, this is a great place to look. All right, restore complete. Let's hit run. Just like that. I'm debugging live source code that I can step into and see exactly how everything works. So if you find yourself at kind of a crossroads, you have no idea why something's happening, or if something's breaking, or you're just curious, this is the way to do it. And it's going to continue to be open source and kind of travel with us as we develop this. So you can see how things change. So that's all I had for today. Thank you.